Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Inspiring Life with Elizabeth. I am Elizabeth Browning. I am so excited to share with you tonight my very, very special guest. My guest tonight has lived a life of stardom and sacrifice and service. And I'm really happy to introduce you to Paul LaGreca. Paul LaGreca is an actor, writer, artist, and he was born in the Bronx, New York in 1962. And he grew up in Gloucester, New Jersey with his beautiful family, where he attended grammar school and high school. After graduating, Paul pursued an acting career in both New York and Hollywood. And he has appeared in major motion pictures, television series, and on New York stages. He's guest starred on such television series as Knight Rider and Fame, and has worked with some of Hollywood's finest artists, including John Cassavetes, Alan Arkin, and Sidney Lumet. Paul's life shifted dramatically after meeting Mother Teresa of Calcutta, the now Saint Teresa of Calcutta. Leaving behind his acting career, Paul chose to pursue the life of a missionary in one of the strictest orders of the Catholic Church, the Missionaries of Charity. Not being able to sustain the rigidity of the order, Paul eventually chose to leave the missionaries and returned to New Jersey. And last year, Paul published his beautiful and deeply moving memoir, The Boy Behind the China Cabinet, a memoir about addiction, Hollywood, Mother Teresa, and me, which was an award-winning book in 2020 in the areas of spirituality and inspiration. Paul is currently working at a global advertising firm. He continues to perform and write, and he's recently taken up painting. Here to inspire us with his extraordinary journey, let's give a very warm welcome to Paul LaGreca.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, Paul, your life makes my head spin.
You and the rest of my friends and family, my goodness.
In a really good way, in a really good way. And I mean, there are so many things I'd love to ask you, but what I'd love for you to do is start us off, if you don't mind, by reading the prologue to your beautiful book, which once I started reading, I really couldn't put it down. I was like, oh my God. I'd love for you to just read the opening, and then we'll sort of take a journey through your life.
Absolutely. So thank you, Elizabeth. And for those of you that don't know, Elizabeth is a brilliant acting coach to many famous people. And she actually has helped me take my acting to new levels. She is an amazing individual. So, all right, the prologue to my book, I'll start with the reading. I left Ruckman Pond. I had to. I was freezing and literally could not feel my hands or feet. For once, I felt like I fit in, a young boy of 9 ice skating on a cold day in the dead of winter, where other kids from my school were also skating. I thought, isn't this what other boys do? Isn't this what I'm supposed to do? It was an especially exciting day for me after receiving new ice skates for Christmas. I was wearing them for the first time, but the fact remained that I did not know how to ice skate. My feet kept slipping and I kept turning to the left and to the right. I had trouble staying on top of the blades, so I started walking on the ice rather than skate. Everyone was shouting, "Skate, Paulie, you can do it!" I was embarrassed and started to strain my feet. I tried to be aggressive to appear not to struggle, but every time I tried, I fell. On one fall, I hurt my wrist badly, but kept pretending to have fun. The sky was cloudy and the afternoon sun was quickly descending. The wind began to pick up and the temperature was in the low 20s. I could no longer bear the cold and the struggle for fun. While I watched classmates play ice hockey, young girls making figure eights, and parents holding the hands of their children and laughing, a panic fell upon me. I felt deep loneliness. It was a deep well, a well of not fitting in, of knowing that I did not belong there, and an inner knowledge that no matter how hard I tried, this thing was not for me. No one else appeared cold. Children who fell just laughed and picked themselves up. For me, it was painful, and each fall frightened me. Who was I, and why wasn't I like these other kids? I gave up the effort of pretending and knew I had to escape as quickly as possible. I did not have the stamina, the willingness, or the strength to remain. All sensation was gone from my hands and feet. I pulled off my skates, which I now hated, and pulled on my sneakers. I flung my skates over my shoulder and walked as quickly as I could back to my house on High Street. I was so panicked that I started to cry, but tried not to let others see me. I could not run because I could not feel my feet, and when I removed my gloves to look at my hands, they were as white as snow. I didn't know it at the time, but I lost all circulation in my hands and feet. It was dark now, and even though I only had a half a mile to walk, it felt like 10 miles. I was alone. But then I remembered God, and through my panic, I prayed. I prayed out loud. I prayed that he would get me to my warm home and my mom. I no longer cared if anyone saw me. I hoped someone who knew me would drive by, but there was no one. Something in my heart said, just keep taking one step at a time. I began to rock to the left and to the right in order to take steps forward. But I felt God with me, and my spirit felt like it plugged into a warmth of love, a love that cannot come from people, but only the divine. He helped me. He embraced me and got me home safely on that blustery winter night in 1972. I had never felt so alone and frightened in my young life, but God showed me that he was there for me. All I had to do was ask. I learned what it meant to be carried by God. My experience was only a preview of what was to come.
Oh, you had me at hello. It was like that in and of itself, I think, is such an embodiment of this beautiful book and journey that you've been through. But also, I think what so many of us, we try to fit in. We think we should like something because that's what everybody likes.
Right.
And there's this other voice that goes, I don't belong here, or this doesn't fit, but we're not sure what to do. And I love this journey. So take us on your journey, because you've gone through many things and lived many lifetimes in one lifetime. So let's start with your childhood, because that's an important part of the book as well.
I think my childhood, well, the theme of my talk, of course, is spiritual surrender. And that really did begin as a little boy growing up with 9 brothers and sisters in a very small house in the Bronx. And my oldest brother, as you may have read in the book, and I write about it in the first third, was a drug addict. I was born into a house where my brother was already addicted. So all I knew was that the house as it was in its dysfunction. And I learned at a very young age, and I guess it was my childhood upbringing, but I learned that the harder I prayed, the shouting would stop in the house. The whole idea of the china cabinet was where I hid. It was a safe haven for me. It was kind of like, la, 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 but it went away if I prayed, and I prayed hard. I had an experience as a little boy of about 3 years old, and I was about 3 or 4. My father held me in his arm. Back then, there was standing room only at church if you got there late. And I'm going to use the terms, Christ and crucifix through the beginning, because that's the language I use. But feel free to replace it with universe if you are that person. I respect that. So I'm standing in the back of the church with my father holding me in his arms. And I guess I was old enough to become aware. And I remember the church being so dark. And I looked over to the left where the crucifix was hanging over the cross. And I had a very intense experience as a child in that I felt connected to the cross. And I felt, how do I describe it? There are no words. I felt called. I felt that this, whatever it was pulling me into itself. It was profound. What I was looking at was beautiful. And if I could have spread my arms and flew, I would have flew into him arm to arm. That was the kind of love I experienced. It was like, I describe it in the book as like going into a black abyss of love. But I felt at that moment that I knew something that maybe other people didn't know. And I never forgot that. So
and you were just a baby.
I was a baby.
3 or 4 years old.
Yes.
And what I think is so amazingly wonderful about that is that that image for you opened you to love.
Yes.
And that it felt safe, you know.
Yes.
And that you started to move toward love even then.
Well, we try to, we try to remember, but I just felt that I was protected, that I knew my journey was, not that I knew it, but I think God was instilling himself in my heart because he knew my journey was going to be a rough one. And I received a gift. So that when my brother was throwing chairs in the kitchen at my mother and father, and there was screaming going on, all I had to do was get into the closet with my little cross over my statue, put it to my forehead and pray as hard as I could. And every time I did it, it worked. Wow. So I learned the power of prayer, of positive thinking, of whatever. And I'd open the door and I'd say to my sisters, come in the bedroom. Where are they? I don't hear anything. He left the house. And it would be like, thank you, God. But that growing up with an addict colors your world. You become an Al-Anon case or an adult child of an alcoholic. You become a caretaker. You forget about your own needs. There's a lot of personality traits that come with that. And one of the things I discovered as a little boy was that the joy I had of singing, acting, and dancing, which I discovered when I was watching The Wizard of Oz at about the age of 4 or 5. And I remember watching it and saying to myself, this is so beautiful. Look at these colors. Look at these people. What love the 4 of them had together. And I remember crying myself to sleep for 2 reasons. What were they going to do without Dorothy, the 3 of them? I felt like now they were lost and abandoned, and who was going to take care of them? And the second thing was that crazy BITCH, Miss Gulch, was going to come back on that bike for the dog. Because let's face it, she ran away. She went back to the house. She was going to go, but that is an open end to that project that was never addressed. Anyway,
that is so interesting that that's what you saw as a kid.
Yeah, she's back in the bedroom. She's going to show up at that damn window any minute. It was Professor Marvel. I was waiting for adults to show up, right? Poor Toto. At any rate, and I remember saying the Wicked Witch she could have had such nice friends. I kept saying she could have had such beautiful friends. Why couldn't she just be nice to them? Anyway, so this dichotomy happened: spirituality, acting. It's kind of like the world, the other side. Love. So it was like this thing happened, and it kept growing. And when relatives would come over, they'd put me up on the kitchen table, and they'd make me imitate all the aunts and uncles at the table. I became like the star.
Oh my goodness. And didn't you also do The Wizard of Oz at school, like the entire show? I had The Wizard of Oz memorized word for word by 1st grade, the whole thing. And the nuns used to put me up on the desk. And the nuns back then were not, these were not, these were stricter nuns. We weren't talking Dominique yet, these were strict, but they used to all come into classroom when I used to act. You were like, oh, Paul's acting. Meanwhile, with the other kids, they were like, sit down in that seat. So I used the acting that was my safety, So, but yeah, no. So it was nurtured. The nuns respected my spirituality as well as my acting.
They told me it was a gift that I could bring to the children and make other people laugh. And then when I went to high school, I was very active in the art department and in the theater department. And I got a scholarship to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York.
Wow.
Yes. And so that began a professional acting career, which kind of got me away from the havoc of Charlie.
That was your brother, Charlie.
It was my brother.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was my thing that I could shine and be away from the insanity. It's kind of course, written out more in the book, but my brother eventually did die of a drug overdose.
Oh.
And it kind of, but I have to say, the day that we got the news, it was two things. Sorrow for my parents first, because to see your parents lose a child, I don't wish that on anybody.
No, I don't think there's anything worse than
No. And the second thing was, I felt relief. And I think Charlie understood that from where he is now. He gets it. And we pray for him, and life goes on. But
and I think it's a real also tribute to your parents while they were managing all of that chaos, that they were still able to hold you in a way that you were able to pursue your dreams.
Yes.
And I think somewhere in the book it says that your father taught you unconditional love.
Yes, he did. My father was the most, and mother, but my father particularly, the man would come home every night from the city with no jacket on. My mother would say, "Oh no, where's your jacket?" I gave it away again, So he had a butcher shop, and there was an Italian and Irish neighborhood where his butcher shop was. And all the Italians and Irish, the white population kind of dwindled out, and it was replaced with the Hispanic and African-American community. And my father said, "I'm not leaving these people. What do you want me to load up in the store? Pernil, hogmores, chitterlings, knuckles." He gave them what they wanted, and everyone came from everywhere to Mr. Jack. And if you couldn't afford it, my father had a little tab. He didn't take credit card. He wrote it down on a piece of paper. And when you had the money, you paid him.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we're going to fast forward to Hollywood.
Hooray for Hollywood.
So how did that happen? Like, a lot of people go to school for studying theater, but how did you wind up in Hollywood, especially?
Yes. Well, yep. I was doing great at the American Academy, and one of my teachers came to me and said, "Hey, my buddy's on the road doing On Golden Pond," which was then a Broadway play, not a movie, "and they need a kid, but has to be 18 and look younger. They need a replacement right away. Do you want the part? You leave class, don't worry about it." And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
He says, "You have to go join the Actors Union like today." So I joined Equity. I went on tour. I went to Pennsylvania to do the last legs of On Golden Pond, came back. I got a Bubble Yum commercial because my agent lied to them and said I was SAG. I went in and I sang for Bubble Yum. They wanted me on the spot. My agent says, "Oh, honey, he's not SAG. I'm sorry, I made a mistake." They said, "Get him to SAG right now to join, because we're going to shoot in 3 hours."
Oh my gosh, that is a series of miracles in and of itself.
It is. And then I got a little small part on Search for Tomorrow. I started doing little things in New York. I worked with Woody Allen, Sidney Lumet. And my agent said, "Get out to Hollywood. You're a street type." And I'm like, "I don't want to be a street type." I said, "I want to be Timothy Hutton in Ordinary People." And she was like, "That's not how you're going to sell, honey. Listen to me, Mamala." She was very Jewish. "Mommy, listen to me, mommy. Look at me. You're a street boy. You're dark. You're dark, mommy. I have to accept that, because I'm sending you to Hollywood. You're going to get street parts. You have to believe me." Well, sure enough, I went out to LA. I got an agent on my 21st birthday. And I got the first thing she sent me out on. And then the second thing she sent me out on was to a non-speaking role in the pilot of Airwolf. And so it was a non-speaking role, but it paid mega bucks, and it was going to shoot in Santa Barbara. So nobody wanted to do it because there were no lines. But sometimes the best acting, as you know, is done without words. So I went into Donna Dockstetter, and I did my audition for her. I had to make believe I was being shot. So I went through this whole thing of being shot. And she goes, "Thank you very much. and I'm walking out, didn't know if I got it, but on the way out, I saw somebody crying. Now, the chapter in the book is called An Act of Kindness and the Birth of Tino, because if I hadn't stopped to talk to this woman to ask her what was wrong, the casting director of Knight Rider lost their guest star for an episode called Silent Night. It carried the show. And he goes, excuse me, what are you here for? And I said, for an Airwolf. He goes, no, you're not here for a Knight Rider? I said, no. He said, oh my God, we just lost somebody and you're the spitting image of this kid. He goes, would you mind coming with me to April Webster's office?
Because you were talking to this woman who was crying in the hall.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the best story.
And I went to Glenn Larson's office that night. They signed me on the spot. Not only did I get the Airwolf episode, I got the Knight Rider guest star, which became kind of like a fan favorite. The Knight Rider fans and me, they've got my heart. And then from that, I got a recurring role on the TV series Whiz Kids, all from stopping to talk to somebody and asking her how she was.
See, I think that's an important story.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we work and work and work to try to make things happen. Yep. And when we just stop and extend kindness, or we do something where we go out of the way, doors open that I never would have opened otherwise. And I'm fascinated because you still have fans. You told me something about if I broke down in the desert today, mm-hmm. Would you share that with
I broke down in the desert today, and I see JD's on the phone, and I put something on Facebook that said, I am stuck in Nevada or Arizona and I don't know where I am. Can anybody help me? The Knight Rider fans would be there so fast, more than my family and friends. It has been such a gift in my life. And I get how, like Eliza Minnelli type or somebody famous who relies on the adoration of other people. I don't rely on that, but I appreciate that piece of it so much that I'm also a generous actor with the fans. So if they want a signed picture, if today somebody contacted me and said, can I send you my license plate? Because I want to know if you can autograph it, because David Hasselhoff autographed it, so it's on the way. I'll do that for him. But that's how I give back. And why not? Because they give me, I've given them Tino, but they've given me so much more. And I'm so grateful. So,
and I think that's such a beautiful way of holding it too, because when you remember that it's about something bigger than you, and there's like a connection and a communion between you and the people that share the journey with you.
Yes.
It really, I love that. So Hollywood, and you're a star, and you're.
So that spiritual surrender I did as a little boy, I got that taste, and then it kind of went away. I got into Buddhism. I was LA man, I was all about health foods and just like, let's sing peace songs and with my bandana on in Griffith Park. And that's kind of where I was, even though I was working as an actor. So I started to witness things that started to go against this inner grain. And that little voice started to go, like, here, Paul, have some cocaine. It was like, I did it. And then the second time it's like, I can't keep doing this. This is what Charlie did. Or my parents would be so upset, but it was all the time. Like, it was very hard for me to find people that said, that were looking for something just strictly pure. Okay. And so I would go to parties and I would find a celebrity in a bathroom making out with an underage person. And then I would go to this party, and this rock star from 1960s, who will remain nameless, is passing out big hash cigarettes for everyone to get stoned on the floor. And it started to feel ew. Like I started to feel violated.
And you were expected to go to the parties. I think that's part of the given for that culture, is like, it's not like you could just not go at that time.
You could just not go, but the chances of your networking, which was critical to acting, networking is critical. And I went, and I could count on one hand how many people that I spoke to, celebs that I, said, this is a decent human being. I mean, no one ought to judge. That sounded horrible. I didn't mean it that way. Meant, where I could find somebody I could relate to fully.
Mhm.
I think the oldest daughter from 8 is enough. I really liked her, but she was an emotional mess.
Well, and it's kind of like being on the ice pond, isn't it? It's like everybody's playing and skating and saying, come on. And there's a part of you that says, I don't want to do this. This doesn't
Yes,
fit for me.
it
But
did not feel right.
where do I go? Like,
That's right.
what do I do?
So what happened was I was invited to 20th Century Fox for an exhibit on UNICEF with a friend of mine. And you basically go, you watch this movie, you write a check as, producers, director, everybody's writing checks, and then you go have a glass of wine. Well, as I was watching this UNICEF film, you saw the children with the distended stomachs, the malnutrition, crying, picking up crumbs off the street. And my heart just, I couldn't, it wasn't enough to write a check. Like, it was like, I describe it as a ray of light coming from the screen and touching my heart. And it was that same love as a boy, as a child. And I started to cry. It was almost like a conversion or an epiphany. And my friend said to me, "Are you crying? Oh my God, you're ridiculous." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I just have to talk to Valerie." Harper was running it. And she goes, "Don't be ridiculous. You just got here. Don't leave Hollywood." She goes, "Learn your craft, do good, and then, then see what you can do. But you just got here. Don't be crazy." But it wasn't enough. And I said, "No, Valerie, I want to do something more. I want to do something now." She goes, "Look, I just started a group with Dennis Weaver. It's called Life. Love is feeding everyone. What we do is we go outside supermarkets and we ask people to go and buy a can of tuna fish, a can of soup, leave it in the basket, and we bring it to the food pantries here in Los Angeles." So I started volunteering doing that. And all of a sudden, I found that over time, I went back to church again. The joy of giving replaced the obsession for success and fame as an actor.
Wow.
I was called in to read for a series regular role on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It was kind of a shoo-in. And I told my agent, no, I want to go home. I need to find out what's going on with me. I can't do this anymore, because I had hit, in the book, I really spell out why a friend of mine shot himself in the head by accident on a film set. John Eric Hexum. Yeah. And so I came home, and my father, when I got home, said, Mother Teresa of Calcutta. I said, "Yeah, I know. I heard of her." He goes, "She's opening a house here in the Bronx she opened up a house here in the Bronx, and me and cousin Gasper, because he was a butcher too, we drop off food at the end of the day. Why don't you come down with me for the drive?" Well, I went down, and the sisters, I didn't meet Mother Teresa yet, but the sisters were all like, "Oh, it's so good to have you here, brother. Oh, wonderful." They were like, "What are you doing in the summer? Would you like to volunteer in our summer camp? We need an actor. The children, can you make them clowns? Can you sing on the guitar?" And I'm like, I still had a little LA in me. I'm like, "Oh, geez, what the hell do these nuns want?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right, I'll volunteer. What do you need?" So I volunteered for summer camp, and I just fell into their wonderful vibration of love, of selfless giving, of sacrificial life. And I started to read books about Mother Teresa. And at the end of the summer, one of the sisters said to me, the Mother Teresa just started a group of men, not just women. Why don't you go and see their life and see, maybe if God is calling you, maybe that's why you left Hollywood. And I'm like, let me go and live with them and see what this is like. So I went on what we call a 2-week come and see, which is scriptural. And when I got to the come and see, after a few days, our Father Superior took us to Washington, D.C. from the Bronx, because they opened an AIDS shelter that was going to house 100 people. And when I walked in the door, who was in front of me but Mother Teresa?
Wow.
And I was, a little starstruck and gushing. I didn't do that when I met half the movie stars I worked with, but with Mother Teresa, I was like, "Oh, Mother Teresa."
I would be starstruck if I met Mother Teresa.
I was like, "Can I have your autograph?" So we made a circle around her, and our superior said, "Why don't you fellas sing her a little song?" So we sang a song from like Godspell or something, "We Can Build a City of God." And so she came around full of joy, big smile. She was thrilled that so many men were coming to see the life. And she took all of our hands and she greeted us. And when she got to me, she says, "And what is your name, brother?" And I said, "My name is Paul." She goes, "Oh, very good. We need a Saint Paul." She goes, I said, "Well, I'm here to see the life." She goes, "No, you must come back. God has called you. You come back." And she says, "But I know you from somewhere." And I said, "No, mother, we've never met before." She goes, "No, I've seen you before." And I said, how humble, I would have remembered if I met Mother Teresa before. I'm like, I don't think so. But she went on to the next person. But it was a very impactful moment for me because who knows, maybe on some level we plugged into the love of Christ or something a little bit deeper.
No, that's the fact that it wasn't just a hello and passing by, but really saying, "I see you."
Yeah.
And I know you.
It meant something to me.
Yeah.
And so to make a long story short, I joined and I entered what we call the aspirancy, where you aspire to the life. And of course, I still had a little Hollywood in me. And to be able to, if you've seen those old 1940s movies of the Nun Story and the Brides of Christ and all those things, that's the kind of life I led, walk along the walls for humility, keep the eyes down, the great silence from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, which was all very beautiful, but it's a very taxing life to live.
Oh, when I was reading the book,
yeah,
and I read the day that you were leaving your home, and literally, and it said, your mother had her back turned in the kitchen, and she turned and she burst into tears. And then you said, because you had made a vow that you could not come back home again for 10 years. I literally stopped and went, no, wait, no, I have to reread that, because you had to relinquish your attachment.
So yes, so when you're entering religious life in a pre-Vatican II setting, not modern, old school, it was the way it was. Your life was no longer your life as you understood it to be. You surrendered in such an extreme and radical way that the obedience piece to your order, where if they told you to sit there, you sit there. If they told you to go and walk on your knees from there, you did that, because that's what God was asking you to do through your superior. And by doing that act of sacrifice and obedience, we work for the salvation of souls, because it's constant sacrifice. And that's what we're being called to. Not everybody can sustain that in a healthy way. And if you have leadership that's still learning, or leadership that's broken or suffering, you don't nurture who's below you, you aggravate. And unfortunately, a lot of men in my group ended up leaving and left broken. And we had to pick our own pieces up. And I was devastated when I left, and I more or less had a bit of a nervous breakdown, literally. Because I was so used to, this was 8 solid months of poverty, of no food, of shut the lights off, don't drink, eat between meals. And I went into the house and everyone's like, have another hamburger. I wasn't used to it. I'm like, what did I do? I left. I'm like, I can't live this life. I'd open the refrigerator and it was packed. Of course, there was nothing wrong with those things. They were living a normal life, but I had to reacclimate back in. And it took me a long time.
Well, and in the training period, I think I smile because I know you, and in musical theater, of course, I think The Sound of Music, right? And Maria's singing in the hills and singing.
Well, we kind of did that.
And everybody is like going, what's the deal with her? But what I recognize that there's like this bright, creative spirit that's filled with self-expression, who also has this deep sense of devotion and wanting to be of the greatest service, and trying to find how to put those pieces together in a very, very strict environment, which is appropriate for some people,
right,
but not for everybody.
Right. Well, the spiritual surrender that part of my life took, perhaps was not the spiritual surrender that God intended for me, even though I left with a multitude of gifts and stories and experiences. One of my missionaries of Charity Brothers is on this line. the children we worked on together, a little girl named Cecilia who had leukemia and was abandoned in the hospital, like all of those pieces that become a part of who you are. And so that's the gift. And Mother was a gift. And my experience was a gift, because Mother even said to us, some of you will leave and some of you will leave in pain. But thank you for coming, because your pain will be the foundation of getting this new group off the ground. We will learn from our mistakes, and you're part of that. You will, once an MC, always an MC.
Right.
And I still live that life to this day in many ways. People think I'm nuts, but you know, I like my silence at night. Don't talk to me after 9 o'clock.
And when you say MC, you're saying missionary.
Missionaries of Charity. Yes. Yeah. And I go into the stories of what happened. Some of them were funny. Some of them were not so funny, but you know.
It's so beautifully written, this book. This
Thank
book
you.
is so powerfully written. And it's like, and I just have to say it, I'm sure it's been said before, but I'm going to say it on this show. This has to be made into a movie. It has to be made into a movie. It's an extraordinary story.
But you know what Hollywood will do, you know? Let's cut out that part. Let's leave that part in, you know? Let's bring in a girl. Why doesn't she, meet him in the seminary?
Well, you know, and it's interesting because my son asked this question. I said, is there a question that you would ask of Paul? And he said, as an aspiring young filmmaker who does want to make a positive difference in the world, who does want to bring more light and love into the world, does he have any advice? Because you've been through so many extremes and you've come through to this other side and this other place where, and correct me if I'm mistaken, you are creating now from all of the wisdom that you've gathered, and you're sharing basic life lessons that anyone can take and use. So yes. I'm curious, and there was something that you said that Mother Teresa taught, which is a quote I love. It's about, it doesn't matter how big the project is.
Oh, no, it's not how much you do, but it's how much love you put in the doing. And that was always something that stuck with me. And it's true. And it's true. And, you know, when I left, you know, I picked up my pieces and I went to Al-Anon, and my friend recommended it. And then I was able to slowly come back. I started to smile again. It took me about a good year to get back on my feet. And I began a corporate career. I went to school for the first time while my brother employed me in business. He put me in his human resources department. And then ever since then, you know, I got acting jobs here and there. I was sent to Hawaii. He let me go. Like, my brother John was like a saint. Like, he really allowed me to get myself back, however that was going to be. And with the hope that I would go back to Hollywood again. But, you know, there's an old saying in LA, once you put a razor blade to that momentum, it's very difficult to get it back. You know, you could look at anyone who has starred on TV series. It's sad to see friends that I knew who are trying to get back on TV, and it's impossible. So you take what you can get, you know, not that I'm actively pursuing, but I get calls every now and then. And if it's something I'm interested in, I will pursue it, you know, as you know. And so I began a corporate career. And here's the best part of human resources. It gives me the opportunity to use, I'm not going to say religiosity or spirituality, but it gives me the opportunity to act virtuously with individuals who otherwise may not receive the same care and attention. So in other words, if I have to, let's say, let somebody go, and there's a circumstance there that, I don't know, maybe somebody will lose, I don't know, maybe somebody can't get back to their country because of a visa issue or something, and I've got to let the person go. Well, I will sometimes fight for somebody to say, let's keep them on unpaid, maybe a leave of absence, so that when they can get back to their country, at least that they're in a haven of, you know, to go that extra mile for other people. And that's what I try to do. And I try to listen and really be a light to others, no matter where God puts me. That's the key.
And see, I think if we were going to like put a bow on this and tie it up, which we're not yet, because I have some other questions. The idea that what I love is that you've experienced stardom and the love that happens with fans. You've experienced profound sacrifice and the love of serving the poor and giving all. And what you've come through to is that, and you said this to me the other day, it doesn't matter if you're being a star, or if you're working as a missionary, or if you're in HR sitting across the desk from someone. It's how much love and how much care you can give another individual.
That's it.
And if
That's
we
right.
could begin to awaken to that,
Yes.
that it's really the moments in which we love one another in whatever we're doing that truly brings us the happiness and
That's right.
and all the other things that we're trying to gain in other ways, which I love as part of your story.
Yeah.
So let me show your book, because this book is, I think, life-changing and so beautiful. And I'm not prejudiced. I really think that, even though I adore you and I think you're incredibly talented. Do you want to say anything else before I share with people the information on how they could get the book, or words of wisdom, or things about?
Just maybe two quick things. The first one is this: it doesn't matter. And look, I don't have the answers to life. I just had experiences. So I can only speak from my own experience that some other people may think is still nuts. But happiness and true joy, and it says this in the Bible, is not here or there. The kingdom of God is within you. And so wherever God puts us, that's where we have to bloom and grow and love. And so if today, Mother Teresa used to say, if today Mother sends you to Korea and they pick you up with a donkey, not to say, what's the donkey? To get on the donkey, to say, I will accept the donkey. If she sends you to Russia and they say, we're going to walk to the mission site, to accept, to walk to the mission site. And if she sends you a limousine, comes to pick you up, not to judge and say, why is there a limousine in my pot? The limousine came to pick me up, to get in the limousine, because then you're free. And when you have total surrender, you are free. So here's what I go through life with everything going on in this world, politically, the divisions, the polarities. Stay centered. There's a power within you, whatever you want to call it, that I close my eyes and I say, you are the most important thing. You are before me at all times. It's the 3-year-old boy. It's the young man who heard something deep within himself in LA. It's the guy in Al-Anon. It's all the same thing. It's like this. God pulls us and calls us back in, because politically, what's happening right now in Israel, all of it, it can be a disruption to the spirit, and you don't want it to be. You want to always remain happy and joyous, because that kills all the evil. You know, what you feel on the inside reflects on the outside. And that's how I try to live my life. When I'm in a bad mood, I try not to take a call. I do what I need to do to get myself back into a good place. And I'm not perfect. Sometimes I flop. And here's a beautiful prayer. I'll just leave you with this. This is my last thing, by Thomas Merton, who was a monk in an abbey. It says, I cannot know for certain where this will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I'm actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you. And I hope that I have that desire in all that I'm doing. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, although I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone.
I'm so moved by that.
So cute. I love you to death.
Thank you so much. And we have people in the chat going, amen, and in agreement. So let me give you a little information. If you are interested, and I highly recommend it. Paul, do you want to explain?
Sure.
We have a special offering. We have a special offering. That's why we're sharing this.
Yeah. So these are my social media contacts. And look, if anybody here today wants an autographed copy of the book is pretty cheap right now on Amazon. They bought a huge load of books and they're selling them at dirt cheap prices. But if you wanted a signed copy, you can go to paullagreca.net. and you can go to the contact link, ignore the prices that are there. If you, there's a PayPal address, fill out that form that's on the contact listing. Go to PayPal, only pay $5 for the book with $3 postage. Tell me if you want a paperback or a hard copy. And as soon as I get that, I will be sure to ship it out to you. So that's how you would get a signed copy. But I think Amazon has it pretty cheap right now. So if you were interested, you can go there.
And if they want to give this as a gift, they can ask that you write to somebody
sure.
particular,
Yes,
like whatever you want written, you know, as an autograph. You get his autograph and a special message, which I think is extraordinary. So just say that you saw him on the show.
Yes. Oh yeah, mention that. Mention I saw you in Elizabeth's show so that I know, you know, that.
Yes, Inspiring Life with Elizabeth, and here's the information. And if you would like to see a replay of this or share it, it will be on YouTube under Inspiring Life with Elizabeth. And I would love for you to subscribe if you haven't already, because they're incredibly wonderful guests.
Yes.
With lots of wisdom from lots of different parts of the world. So Paul, any last word of advice or wisdom to our followers as we get ready to go?
I think I said enough. I think it's all there, but I just want to say thank you to everyone who made the time to come. You guys are, you know, everybody touches me very deeply, and I love you all, and especially you.
Oh my goodness. And especially you. And thank you so much for being part of the night. And thank you for joining us.
Yes.
It is such a blessing to have spent this time with you. And I look forward to seeing the movie.
Let's see. You never know.
It comes out along with all of the things you're going to be doing in the future.
And no matter what they offer me, you know, it's not going to be enough money.
That's right. That's right. You are a light in this world, and I love you, Paul. Thank you.
I love you too.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.